Um, all right, hello everybody. It looks like we're getting it put together here. So welcome to Lunar Alchemy. My name is John. This is Bella, of course. I'm sure you all know. I'm pretty excited about this week's Lunar Alchemy session because this particular gateway is truly at the base of the work that I've been exploring and processing and sharing with other people over the last 7 years. For me, this particular gateway gets right to the basis of everything. And I definitely want to explore this possibility for transformation with Bella's input and perspective, because one of the things that's at the heart of this gateway is the interaction and alchemy that occurs on an inner level between the masculine and feminine natures. So while we can look at this particular gateway through the gene keys and look at, the ways that we experience it internally, intellect, precision, and impeccability through the shadows, gifts, and cities, what I think really manifests through this particular one is the interplay of masculine and feminine nature. So that's kind of what I'm excited about. Bella, how are you doing, and what do you see going on with this particular pathway that's happening right now?
Yeah, it's super, super, super powerful because we have both the sun and the earth, like you're speaking about in the 61 and the 62, and also we have Pluto there. And it's going to be at this exact opposition between the sun and Pluto on Saturday. And Pluto has to do with transformation, has to do with often death and rebirth, because it's like transformation doesn't just there is something with transformation that really kind of has to go to the abysmal, or how do you say, like has to go down and then come up, or that sting of Scorpio that kind of has to do its work, its alchemy in you. So for me that is really powerful. And the other thing that I've already spoken about, I believe in another week, is that we have Venus and Mars in Leo. They're meeting, and they're only meeting every 2 years, because Venus and Mars are almost the same speed. So it takes Venus 2 years to catch up with Leo, and now it's happening here in the fourth gate of understanding and forgiveness. But it's also the gate of intolerance, and I could even feel that this morning, because I was on calls from 9 this morning, and then there were some things that weren't happening the way that they were planned, and I could feel that intolerance, like I'm like, it's already much how it is. So it has to go after the plan. And that fourth gene key for me goes very much together with the fifth line core wound in the gene keys, which is about guilt. And sometimes it's like we can't try to take it little by little. We kind of just have to forgive the whole thing, even if we don't understand it. It's like kind of going beyond. And that's exactly, John, when you were speaking about the dance between the 61 and the 62, is that everything is not resolvable with the intellect or even with logic. There is something more spiritual. There's something more feminine, something more receptive that is able to kind of embrace it all, even see the great mystery of things. So for me, exactly, that's a tool that we are learning this week when it comes to 62 and 61, and also Venus and Mars in the 4. And here we have, it has to do with our passions, our boldness, our self-esteem, our self-confidence. Leo is connected to the sun, so it's about how we shine in the world. And they're meeting here, and it's like they're asking us in this phase for the next 2 years to look at these things. And maybe there are things that need to die, that are part of our psychosis, or part of our codependence, or part of our victimization. here on the other side and need to die for us to be able to live the truth of who we are on the stage of our life. And at the same time, we have Mercury, the communicator, the way we think, the way we communicate, the way we understand things, coming in here to Cancer. The sun is in Cancer, so nurturing our life for these 2 next years so that we can be on the way that we want to show up on our stage. That feels very live. And then the reflector chart is all white. There's so much possibility in here that I feel and see right now. So it feels very, very powerful. I believe that closer to the weekend, we're still in a new moon, we're going to go. So, but I believe that closer to Saturday, and you can even see here, you see that Pluto is in the 6th line, and now we have the sun in the 2nd line. So the sun moves 1 line per day, basically. There's going to be a few more days, and we're going to have that exact conjunction in the 6th line of the 61. So yeah, that's what's happening on the sky.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot brewing at the moment. Of course, we've just, today we've moved into this particular gate. We've been in gate 53 for some time, and the new moon just happened with that. And the new moon process, of course, is always a powerful opportunity to be able to take action that is free from some of that influence of what's constantly being pulled on within our systems. So, um, I think for me, there's been a lot of I've had a lot of sort of physical integration that I've been having to go through over the last few days. And what you're describing, Bella, with the meeting of Venus and Mars, for me, that sounds like a kind of a joyous opportunity, which is, usually that's sort of like something you experience in Jupiter. But for me, Venus and Mars, and maybe this just speaks to my own individual particular makeup, the meeting of those 2 planets represents in a large way that masculine and feminine manifestation through our planetary bodies. And when we're looking at this particular gate that the sun is occupying in 62, what really leads to the transformation is the proper alignment of those masculine and feminine natures coming through us. When the masculine is in a position of leading the movement through of manifestation into the world, whether it's in society or whether it's in our own individual relationship with the world, what we end up with is this pyramid where there's a top-down type of a organization. And while that can be extraordinarily effective at generating something that we might experience as progress, over time, particularly in the lower frequencies, the repression of that feminine nature that may occur in that state is going to lead us into some unfortunate ways of relating with everything. And that process of elevating the intellect into a state of sort of it can become sort of a cult, when we are so focused on using the intellect to divide and dissect, we lose sight of the entire picture. And within this gene key, it's kind of interesting to note that the use of science as a tool to explore the nature of reality, it's on the verge of kind of disproving itself as a method. Not, that's probably the wrong terminology to use. It won't disprove itself, but because of the understanding of quantum mechanics and how the role of the observer actually affects the outcome of any cause and effect experiment that we can put into place, it makes all truths, all facts that can be determined by science relative in nature to the observer. And when that occurs, the foundation of factual orientation that we have with the world, then it becomes a little bit more slippery than we may have imagined. So with that Venus and Mars coming into conjunction, we have this opportunity of flipping that way of relating in the world to allowing that feminine nature to flower in what we might call a form of leadership, where instead of leading with this sort of sharp point that's going to dissect everything in the world into its constituent parts, there is this sort of, it's kind of like a reversing of that process where the feminine absorbs everything and allows that to come into our singular point of consciousness that we are, to absorb all that's happening. So that conjunction happening in Leo is also, it's a huge opportunity for us to flip our way of relating. Bella, what are your thoughts about how this particular shadow frequency manifests in the world or relates to an experience that we're having that we can begin to, I don't know, transform, look at as a possibility for whether it's expansion or awareness, or I don't know, where is this going?
Yeah, I feel when I hear you and when I think about 62, there is something here again where the 62 and 61 for me go hand in hand. And the 62 in the lower frequency in the shadow relies on logic and science, and it can't see outside of that box. So it's very rigid in that sense. It's that intellect that actually limits. And I feel like, yeah, there is something, and I don't want to go in and become political or but there is just something, even where we are now in the world with COVID, and there are things that are, there is just something, and I don't know, how to express it, but what does fact checked mean? Who is checking the facts, for example? And what is this? There has been, when it says there's been like careful studies, or how do you say, like there has been, when we know that whatever studies have been on the vaccine, for example, has just been done in less than a year, what does that mean? And it comes up even on my Facebook when do want to put this frame on your thing, and this is a safe, and I feel like when I see fact checked, I don't like, for me, that's almost something I don't want to believe in, because if it has to say that, well, then it's because it's not reliable. So I can see the whole heaviness of that, of using science almost like a weapon, and for me like an agenda with an agenda. And of course, on the other side, because we can't say, oh, it's the logic, it's the left brain, it's strategic and like manipulating that way with language and, saying this is almost safe. Like what, that's one side of it. But when we look at the 61, we have something that can't be proven. It's the opposite. It's the fundamentalism. There is no proof that just that religion exists or just that way of thinking. But so that kind of goes, it has a similar outcome in a way in the shadow frequency. It can look like psychosis from the outside, but the result of it doesn't really matter if it go really extreme in the 62 or really extreme in the 61. At the end of the day, like you're saying, where we're going with it, well, the effect on the world is detrimental, whether it is the abstract or the logical that we're using to limit truth to move through us. And I believe that what we can see in those two is that the truth can only come when the polarities come together. And we aren't too far away trying to fact check something that's actually not even possible to check in that sense. Or, too far out in some belief that it's that actually doesn't make sense either. So for me, sovereignty, core stability, is coming back into the balance of those two, whether it's masculine, feminine, receptive, active. And that's what I feel we often speak about here. And at the end of the day, that's kind of the crossroads I see where humanity is. So are you going to take the extremes? And we can even see right now we have Mercury going in the 15th that we were speaking about like a month ago when the sun was there, which can be extreme. So I think that there is still extremes to be shown to us. And it is to know your middle ground, because the world is going to give you examples, both that are completely logical and fundamentalist, that can be attractive in a way, because you're going to be part of something. You're going to have something to believe in or fight for. And this other thing, like, that somebody is an engineer as well, but I've looked at the research, so are you allowing that to pretend? And we can see that in the reflector chart right now, open head, open ajna, especially open ajna. Are you pretend to be certain to feel like falsely safe, or can you actually hold that truth that we might not really know, and who lives is going to know? I don't know if that's an expression. I think it is, in some language at least. Like if you live it's going to tell you. So don't attach yourself so much to a belief or to science, but wait and see. And can you hold that truth of what it is to be human and meet life in every moment, learning more? The experiences are going to give us the wisdom, and we can also learn from the past, of course. So look at something similar in the past and see how it played out. Maybe that's going to give you more information and confirmation than something that's fact checked by whom.
Yeah, that it really kind of points in the direction to me for what is perhaps hinted at by human design and the gene keys, in terms of what is the process of human evolution moving in the direction of. When we look at this evolutionary change that is predicted for, what we're 6 years away from this time of great mutation that is part of this system of looking at the world, is when we sort of step away from any system that we're using to engage or interface with the reality that we are surrounded with. When Bella, you're talking about the sort of fundamentalist possibility of looking at reality, what we're really understanding is an emotional form of perception. When perception is completely determined by emotional experience, the results, the conclusions that are drawn can be extraordinarily fundamentalist. And they may land in an accurate place compared to everyone else who is not seeing that way. but it also may land in a place with conclusions that are completely unconnected to the reality that others are perceiving. Likewise, this use of the intellect is, rather than an emotional form of perception, it's this mental form of perception. These layers of humanity. If you look at humanity as just three layers of beingness, a physical, emotional, and mental being, which is how science would organize what it is that we are. Because as yet, science has not identified any physical aspect or process going on in the body that proves that there is yet something beyond these three layers to what it means to be a human being. This mystical aspect that is completely embodied within the gene keys in the Siddhic frequencies. Any aspect of Siddhic frequency in the gene keys is simply an embodiment of an aspect of our being that goes beyond these natures of physical, emotional, or mental. And when we begin to use this thing that you said, Bella, is using the intellect like a weapon. When we externalize that weapon, we're in the reactive nature of this shadow, and we use the truth, the facts, the data that we can gather in order to erode the well-being of those around us, to cut down, to destroy, to overcome. All this comes from some pretty basic survival requirements that are still part of our physical system from our brains. To survive means to either dominate or overcome someone else. It's just kind of a masculine form of this particular gate that many people today are referring to as toxic masculinity. Well, masculinity isn't really toxic ever. It's just this form of behavior that is harmful to other people's well-being. And we can do the same thing with intellect as a weapon in a feminine way, where instead of outwardly directing it, it's directed inwards. And then all of the details and the data and the information, they become prisons for our development. And that kind of leads right into that psychosis connection there with the 61, where these mental illnesses that are based upon details, obsessive compulsive disorder, this can lead to personality splits, all types of forms of psychosis can develop out of this sort of this type of focusing intellect as a weapon inwardly. Agoraphobia, where you're afraid to leave the house. There's too many details of things that could happen to us that are dangerous. When you're unable to be aware of those things without those things ruling, and they're ruling your activities, that's kind of what happens. And both of these shadows prevent a development into this other aspect of self that is a possibility for human evolution starting now, perhaps for all time humans have been capable of doing this, but the technologies that exist on the planet for achieving these types of evolutionary processes, in the yogic systems, some of those technologies require lifetimes of dedication. And here we are at this moment where here's this technological system, gene keys or human design, It's a technology for understanding what's happening inside us. And it's saying, hey, look, there's this thing that's going to happen where your your expanded self, whatever goes beyond these levels of being, has an opening and an opportunity to like become your way of seeing the world. And to me, that transition from a three-layered being into something that has the possibility of more is completely dependent upon the aligning of these dual natures inside of us in in a natural way. You know, we can kind of we can define and say, based on our own attitudes, our own perceptions, our own way of looking at the world, how masculine nature and feminine nature should relate. But in nature, it's described by every aspect of nature in a fractalized way, meaning you can see it at the macrocosmic level and the microcosmic level, and that relationship is never different. It always functions in the same way. And it is the very process of life expansion. You know, we were looking at expansion from um, gate 53, and this combination of the proper relationship between masculine and feminine is what produces that expansion of life. So I mean, this particular gene key 62, you know, the drama of the gene keys happens from the 3rd to the 61st. The 1st and the 2nd, and the 63rd and the 64th are like the beginning and the ending, or the prologue and the epilogue. Here we are at 62, that is just like this one out of everything that is like, hey, here's everything that can happen to you through this entire range of possibilities. It's pretty awesome. So for me, this idea of aligning these inner natures in resonance with how nature functions means that we have to reorganize how we relate with our mind and our heart space. And that's what gets into the work that I've been processing and sharing with people for a number of years, which is about shifting the primary focus of perception into the heart space rather than having the primary perception originate in the intellect, which is, you know, that's what the manifestation of the shadow is. Once that intellect becomes primary and dominant in our experience, the balance of these inner natures of masculine and feminine are no longer in harmony. They're no longer in harmony with the nature that's around us. You know, the the feminine nature is the receiver. The masculine nature is the activator. But the feminine nature doesn't allow just any activation into its space. It has to be in the right approach. The right harmony has to be created in order for the life process to be developed through that feminine principle. So, for me, this particular gene key is all about heart and what our inner relationship is to the material of our heart and the potential that our heart space holds.
I remember last year when we were giving the names to the doors or the archetypes, that we were speaking about the heart surgeon for this one. Yeah, that makes sense. And the precision that, when there is something when you deal with the human heart, there is a certain finesse or precision that really can help you. And, I believe that the heart is also, the heart, the universal heart, in a way, is so it's so powerful. So there's nothing it can't break. We say break. My heart was broken, or this person broke my heart. The heart can't be broken, but in a human sense, in the way that we perceive it, yeah, it feels like the heart might be able to break, and that we need to have that precision with it. And at the same time, the heart can't break. But I feel like the 62 might speak more about that precision that's needed, also depending on part of what we were saying with the core wounds and all these things, like how we are kind of reactive to things, especially when it's interpersonal. um yeah.
Yeah, I love that that was a consideration, the heart surgeon, because of the precision that is required in that space. And our perception of the heart space, we have physical manifestations of sensations that occur that have led us to connect certain ideas with the heart, ideas about love and kindness and compassion. They're connected with some of the sensations that we experience. And when we have entanglements, energetically speaking, from the layers of our being that are produced in from this physical experience, those emotional and mental layers, they can interfere in incredible ways with the functionality of that heart space. Whereas a clouded and chaotic emotional body will cause the heart space to experience that same degree of distortion and confusion that can become possible. A lot of people say, like, oh, my heart is so confused. And actually, that's not true. The heart is never confused. What's confused is the mind, because the intellect cannot grasp certain things that the heart is capable of processing. That intellect is literally incapable of making logic out of the movements of the energies of the heart. And so it's not really the heart that's a confusing space. It's just that we're trying to use the intellect in a way, in a for a purpose that it was not designed for. And some of that precision that that is possible through this particular gate, it arises directly out of the harmonious expression of the heart. When the heart comes into resonance with that which it is in harmony with, then there is absolute precision in everything that you're able to do, because there's no more this or that going on with your mind. It's just absolutely directed towards the one feeling that is appropriate and in perfect harmony with what you are. Such a powerful process.
Yeah, I believe there is something as well that I want to add that has to do with the codon ring of no return. Because
Mm.
I mean, I agree. I mean, for me, in a way, we could take any gene key and say it's about the heart. Even the
Yeah.
35, it's about adventure. But at the end of the day, it's about the heart. Like, all of them are about the heart. So I feel like there is something important here with the codon ring of no return, which has to do with language, which has to do with the power of the word, and they are in this collective circuitry. So there is an impact in how the word is used, which a little bit goes back to what I said before. But we have mastery of words at a gift frequency in both the 31 and the 62. And the 31 also is the Leo gate, which goes back to what we spoke about before with the fourth gene key, where we have where we have Venus and Mars right now. And I feel like the heart that cares is it's is when whoever has the 62 and the 31, like when that heart awakens and says, I'm going to use my word, my expression, my light language. It doesn't really matter where on the frequency band it is. My vibration, I'm going to use my vibration to speak truth to the whole, no matter what it costs, and it's not like the person who's like putting on, bombs on the whole body or whatever it's called, and then it's gonna, blow itself up because it believes in some kind of thing, it's really the truth that is sovereign between, like what you say, like everything you have brought in today, John, about the polarities. Like when you're in the middle, when you can speak from that place, there's no return. And that's the power for me of the 61 and 62 together. We have leadership and precision, and it is collective. So it has learned from the past and is bringing us into the future because it really cares. And that's the thing, when the feminine and the masculine are in sacred marriage, it really cares, So
Yeah.
that feels important as well.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because that, that explains why this particular gate in the gene key is connected with the throat, and why it's spoken about in terms of when human consciousness raises itself to the point of reaching that space of the throat, that this is the Siddhic frequency that becomes available to a human being. And you know the for me, the focusing in the heart in light of this awareness that, oh, this particular gene key happens through the throat, it simply has to do with where energetically does the intellect actually stem from, and where energetically does the full spectrum of what's available within the throat stem from. And in between those two places is the heart. So like, until humanity can perceive and live in their heart space, there's no way they can touch that throat space. It will always and only touch the intellect from the throat. So when you encounter a situation in your life, a challenge, you won't have access to the solutions that are available from the heart space. You'll only have access to the solutions that are available from your thinking mind, which, as almost everybody probably is realizing at this point, you know, that can lead you down some pretty uncomfortable holes, and rabbit holes. Just your mind will just like turn on itself. I mean, people are racked with anxiety in today's society. People are riddled with depression. These two forms of relating to the future and the past that are completely out of harmony with who we really are. It all comes from our absolute reliance on the intellect and our lack of reliance upon the connection between the heart space and its ability to be amplified through that throat expression that you're talking about, Bella, of being able to bring that inner frequency of truth out into the world through your expression, whether it's through your actions or your words, or whatever it is that you do. So I'm glad you brought that up, and we were able to touch on that aspect of it, because I feel like, once when we look at the 55th gene key as kind of being the the what we're primarily focusing on as this point of great change that is occurring, those gene keys that come beyond the 55 are going to elaborate into a space of human experience that is not yet available on the collective level, but will become available as we move through this great change. And that's why I'm really excited also about next week's session and the upcoming full moon, because that's going to happen in gate 56, which also happens to be my pearl sphere, and is the kind of like the after the great change, what happens. And for me, that's a pretty exciting one that we're going to be looking at next week. If you're watching on Facebook, um, each week we're going to be we in Lunar Alchemy, we are doing quantum healing transmissions along with our discussions, contemplating the energies that are present in our body and allowing those energy transmissions to entrain us into the possibility for expanding our awareness. And on the next full moon, which happens a week from this coming Friday, we'll be in gate 56, and we'll be doing an open house for anyone to join. We'll post a link for that open house, and you'll be able to experience the healing transmission at that time with the full moon energies on, which we'll talk about how that can affect our systems and become a powerful opportunity to overcome our shadow patternings so that we can experience more of the gift frequencies of where we are. So you can comment that you're interested in that, or circle back around to this video in Unlock Your Design, and we'll have the link for that posted in there. But so we'll continue on with our Lunar Alchemy membership to do tonight's transmission for this particular gate of the 62. And we'll look forward to seeing you all another time. Let's see, I have to do that first. All right, see you next time. All right, so